So first things first, this is my first Pose review. I've been watching it since the first season, and I have to say it's one of my favorite shows. A lot of people that I know personally, they don't tune in because they're like, oh, well, I don't understand that. That's about gay people, and I don't understand that lifestyle, blah, 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 blah. And my thing is, it's about people. And even if you don't necessarily relate to the lifestyle and you don't understand it, it's still showing you this intersectionality and the experiences of people. And I'm really big on just trying to understand people that I don't understand. I feel like that's how I navigate my life and move in this world, is to try to understand people I don't necessarily understand. And so the reason why I started tuning into the show in the first place is because of none other than Funky Dineva. I heard Funky Dineva's review on the first episode, and I was so moved by it. I'm like, well, I don't know what show this is, but I'm going to tune in. And so I watched it, the first episode, and then I watched this documentary on Netflix called Paris is Burning, which explores, it's this documentary, very old, but it explores this, the ballroom culture, okay? Which is kind of like, I don't want to call it underground, but technically an underground culture of, people just assume, gay people, this is how gay, but it's so many different caveats of being in the LGBT community. I know it's a whole bunch of other letters after that, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I can say them all. I'm a Black, straight woman. And so sometimes, I don't want to sit here and pretend like I understand this world that I don't, necessarily understand all of it or the caveats of all of it. But I try to understand it, okay? Because I do have gay people in my family. Now, I don't have anybody that's trans. That's very different for me. But I, again, try to understand it. And so when I saw Paris is Burning, I was just moved by that documentary. And so I started to tune into Pose every week, and I was hooked. And before I knew it, I was like, I can't believe this first season is over. This can't be done. But I believe they only made several episodes. I think they only have like 7 or 8 episodes of the first season, because I think what happened was they were not even sure that this was going to take off. I mean, you're talking about having Black and Latino, trans, and gay people on screen. Okay, not on like HBO or Showtime or something like that. This was on FX. And you don't know what's going to happen with that kind of show, because we know, regardless of how, I guess, we've moved forward in this world, there's still a lot of people that's kind of like pushing back on that. So the show actually did well, but I believe Ryan Murphy and Janet Mock didn't even know how this was going to go. So they only made a few episodes. And if you see the last episode of the first season, they kind of wrapped it up. They kind of wrapped it up in this pretty bow as to not to say, we don't know if this is coming back, so we're just going to end it beautifully. But they made it in a way that they could come back. Okay. It seemed like they wrapped up everybody's little story kind of nicely, but you was hoping that they would be able to come back and flesh out these characters in more detail. And they have done that in season 2. They are doing that. So with season 2, I'm not going to get into like the first few episodes that I missed, but now this thing is really prevalent. This AIDS, they're living in this world of AIDS. You have Preytel, who is living with the HIV virus. Blanca has full-blown AIDS. And we start this episode that we're watching with the nurse and Blanca talking about, Preytel won't take his medication. He won't take the AZT, which is like this kind of cocktail to take for the symptoms, to take for the HIV. He refuses to take it. So he's trying to do all this kind of like other home remedies by like eating all his butter and stuff, because he doesn't want the side effects of the AZT. And so they're trying to convince Preytel to take this medicine. But the episode is mostly about Candy Ferocity. Okay. Candy and Lulu left the House of Abundance. Electra Abundance. They left the House of Abundance and they have their own house. They did that last season. And so, Candy has also taken up, she's stripping, because, I guess it's a lot to run a house. And so we have the scene at the beginning, basically, of, they're in the ballroom, everybody coming in. It's like these different categories. Candy comes in voguing. She's a little late to the party because, again, voguing was a big deal. Now it's 1990. Madonna basically took voguing and took it mainstream, but this was something that started in the ballroom. Okay. And so her and Preytel are going back and forth like her and Preytel always do, always going back and forth with each other. And, she's stuff like, why are you always coming at me? Why are you always being harder? Because Preytel is always hard on Candy. He just was. Every time she tried to do something, she'd be coming in there just a mess. And he always be reading her in front of everybody. But Candy has never backed down to Preytel. So later on, we see Preytel with some of the judges in the restaurant. They going over like some stuff that they need to get done and going over different categories and what, and so Candy comes into the rest. She's already there in the restaurant. She overhears them talking and she says, we need to add a lip syncing portion. We need to have a category for lip syncing. Preytel, again, he never seems to like anything Candy says or does, so he turns her down. Candy take that fork, put it up to his neck, and they going back and forth. You gonna cut me, bitch, and all this other stuff. And Candy leaves out in a huff, and he says this little thing. It was like, ooh, she must be a Scorpio, which I'm just like, okay, now I'm a Scorpio. But anyway, we got a little fiery temper in us and everything. But what I love about Candy is that she never really backs down. Like, she stands up for herself always. But here is where we know this is the last time we technically see Candy in living, so to speak. Now, later on, Lulu comes over to Blanca's house, to the house, and she's like, she hasn't seen Candy, in a couple of days. It's not like her to call, she didn't show up to work. And this is where I'm just like, I get like this heavy feeling in my stomach because I didn't really know what was going to happen. I didn't look at any of the previews. I had no idea this was going to be it for Candy. I really walked into this blind. And so, Lulu and Blanca go down to, Lulu basically confesses that it's really expensive to run their house. And so Candy has been like taking tricks. So, and she's been doing sex work. And so they go down to this like seedy hotel place that, that Lulu knows this is where Candy goes. And they going back and forth with the hotel manager. Like, if you see her, please let us know. She's always in the same room 44. And they see that the key for room 44 is still missing. So Blanca's like, please, if you hear anything, here's my number. Please let us know. Later on, we see that Poppy answers the phone. It's the hotel manager for Blanca. And Blanca's looking very solemn, and we kind of know something. So when Lulu runs over to Blanca's house, like, what's going on? Have you heard from her? Where is she? Blanca basically is like, Candy's not coming home. She's dead. I just dropped. That was just it. I was just like, oh my gosh, this cannot be really happening. Now, when Blanca goes on to explain what happened with Candy, and they show the scene where the maid finds Candy in the hotel room. I kid you not. Me and my cousin would kind of like texted, and she has like some kind of app where she was already watching it, and she was watching it commercial free. So she was way ahead of me when she was watching it. I was like, oh no, I was looking at Candy, they had her like sprawled out. I'm like, no, that's not Candy. I bet they made a mistake. That doesn't even look like Candy. My cousin was like, no, that's her. That's her cousin. That's her. I guess I was just wishful thinking, was hoping that it really wasn't Candy and that they just found somebody else. But turns out it was her, of course. And then we fast forward to, Angel, Blanca assigns Angel to go and take care of, calling her parents, Candy's parents. Blanca and the white nurse lady, I can't think of her name, and Electra try to get her body from the medical examiner, from the, and they finally relent. The nurse calls in a favor from that guy, the Asian guy. He finally releases the body to them, because remember, a lot of these trans people, they don't have families. They don't have their families anymore. Okay. Their families are like the house people, because a lot of these people were kicked out of their house. They don't have their families like they used to. So, now we're at the funeral, and, the embalmer guy, he's like, oh, I've always liked her. She always was so nice to me. She was down here a lot of times, because remember, a lot of funerals were happening at this time because people were dropping dead of AIDS. And so, they come in and they view Candy, and they notice that this is all wrong. Candy is dressed up like this old church lady. She got the wig, the old church lady wig. The makeup is all wrong. So Electra, Angel, Blanca, they wipe all that mess off her face and they get Candy right, okay, for her final departure. Okay, then we move on to the actual, people are just kind of like, a lot of people show up for Candy. Pray Tell starts talking about how he and Candy, they didn't always have the best relationship, but, he just said some really nice words. And so they bow their heads, they're in silence. And here is Candy showing up to Pray Tell. Okay, Candy is now back. She's going to have all these moments with these different people, these characters in the show. And, she's like, why you always so hard on me? Why you was always so mean? And I like how Pray Tell finally, I hated that it had to be in death. But I'm finally glad that she had some kind of like understanding of why Pray Tell was the way he was with her. And he was just saying, because I was basically jealous of you. You was this bold black woman that spoke her mind, and he was just afraid of that. He didn't know how to handle that. And the fact that she just never backed down, she was always so, like, she spoke up for herself. Candy was bold, and that just scared him because he could never he was uncomfortable with it. He was worried about her being as bold as she was. He was afraid for her. All right, which I'll get into in a few minutes about how a lot of people are saying things about colorism in this show and stuff like that. Okay, then we move on to Electra comes in. She's like, it's these old people out there partaking in our stuff, looking like George and Wheezy. Blanca go out there and finally realize it's actually Candy's parents. Candy's parents have showed up. They've showed up, and now they are viewing their child. And then she has these really touching moments with her mother and her father, which tore me up. Okay. I was already crying when Candy was going back and forth with her mother, and her mother was like, "You my baby. I didn't know how to take care of somebody like you. I didn't know what to do with somebody like you." And I love that moment. And when the moment she had with her dad, I mean, I was just messed up. I was all messed up. I kid you not. It just messed me up. And then, the whole Lulu scene was really funny. Now, Lulu at this time, remember, Lulu and Candy were house mothers. They were very, very close. But then you find out that they may have been more like frenemies than anything, because Lulu just started snatching everything off of Candy's body. She took the brooch. She took the gloves off. People were just like, oh, they're gasping. They're like, oh my gosh, Lulu is losing it. And then Lulu and Candy have this moment outside of the funeral home. It's like where you start to see kind of that they were more like frenemies than anything, and how Candy probably more than likely didn't necessarily like Lulu because Lulu was lighter. Lulu was just a light-skinned Latino, whatever she was. I don't even know what Lulu is, but they just had that kind of frenemy thing going on. But I'm glad that they had that moment. The only thing I was actually surprised about that Candy did not have a moment was Electra abundance. I just knew that they was going to give Electra a moment with Candy. Like they was going to have this back and forth, because remember, Candy and Lulu came from Electra. That was their house mother. And then they went off on their own. And Candy had just gotten Electra out of some mess, the episode before when Electra messed around and, ended up with a dead trick. And Candy helped her get out of that mess. So I'm surprised that they did not have a moment between them. I just assumed it would be more. That was just my assumption, that there would be more. And maybe Electra was very stoic in this episode. You didn't see any like crying and anything like that with her. So I don't know. Maybe they'll like explore that with Electra. Maybe they'll hit her later in later episodes. But I was just surprised that they did not do that with Candy and Electra. Now, Candy's final moments. Okay, now this, like I said, I'm an emotional roller coaster. I'm sad. I'm laughing because of Lulu. Then I'm sad again. Now the funeral is about to come to an end. And they roll Candy, the pallbearers come up and they roll her into the ballroom. And Candy has her final moments where she gets out and she is lip syncing Never Knew Love Like This Before. She is looking good. She is slaying that dress. She is dressed. She is looking good. Okay. That song now is stuck in my head because of that. And I've known that song forever, but now it's stuck in my head and I can't get it out of my head. But it's just like, I was crying through that because I'm looking at Candy and she is just working it. And I'm sad because it took her to die to have her moment. It took her to die to have that moment, and she got all tens. And the Never Knew Love Like This Before, that was just beautiful. I don't know if Angelica Ross is going to get an Emmy, but she should. If she don't get no Emmy nod for that, the Emmys will just, I don't even watch the Emmys, but Pose needs an Emmy. She specifically needs an Emmy nomination for that episode. I kid you not. I hope she does because that was beautiful. Now, a lot of people are like, this was not the way to end Candy's, thing. Why did they end her like this? First things first, if people don't know, Angelica Ross, who plays Candy Ferocity, is moving on to American Horror Story. So she's not losing a job. She's just transitioning to another one. And also for those people, those critics that are like, they killed off the black woman. Listen, the story needed to be told. I hate that Candy had to be sacrificed for it. But again, now that we know that Candy is moving on to American Horror Story, that makes me feel a little better. Had they not told the story of how black trans women are killed because sex work is usually one of the only jobs, especially back then, that they could do, then people would be criticizing the show. Now that they've told the story, and I know they pulled it from Paris is Burning, they pulled it from this woman named Venus Extravaganza, and that's how her demise was. A lot of people felt like it should have been a white character or a Latina character. A lot of people thought it would have been Angel that would have met her demise like that. Because remember, Angel was also into sex work and say, like, why wasn't it Angel? Why is it? But again, Candy has moved on to American Horror Story. Okay. Also, I've watched a few reviews, specifically Justin Jay's, and how he's like, oh no, why they had to, they always made the black characters, Electra, Pray Tell, Candy, they always the angry black people. They so angry, they make them, they kill them out. And, I respect his opinion on the show, and he's always bringing in like this colorism thing. And I'm not saying that it's not colorism. Who am I? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I didn't look at it as being aggressive. I didn't look at Pray Tell and Electra and Candy as being this aggressive characters, these mean, aggressive. I just look at them as just standing up for themselves, especially as a black woman. We're the last ones to be heard. And I know people don't look at trans women as being women, whatever. But I'm saying that perhaps those characters are the way they are because we are trying to be heard. We are the last ones to be listened to. We stand up for ourselves. We want to be heard. And that is deemed as loud and aggressive and mean and angry, and that's how society views us anyway. So, but I didn't necessarily see it that way. Now, had she been a passive character, you would have complained that she was too passive and she just didn't speak up for herself. I didn't look at Candy like that. Okay, she may not have been the softest character, but I liked her style. I liked that she stood up for herself. She wasn't always the nicest of characters, but I like in the end that, again, Pray Tell acknowledged that he was jealous of her because, again, this was a woman who wasn't afraid. She wasn't afraid. She spoke up for herself. She needed to be heard. She made sure she was heard. And that's how I took her character. That's how I took it. Like I said, I've seen the different criticisms of the show, but I can't speak from the experience not being a trans or gay person. So those people that may have their certain, this show doesn't do this, listen, I understand that. And I respect those opinions. Okay. But the fact that a show like this is on the air and that they are allowed to tell their stories of black, gay, and trans people, that is a huge deal. And we don't want to be so critical that we end up pushing this show away because you're not getting everything you want out of this show. That's what I always worry about when I hear like people that's constantly triggered, like a Justin Jay, who always seems triggered about everything. All right. You don't be so critical that you push a show like this off the air when it's finally here. Yes, there's work to be done, and I hope that they will flesh out the characters. I'm sad to see Candy go, but the story has needed to be told. She did an amazing job, and my girl Candy is securing another bag on American Horror Story. How can we not be happy to see this trans woman transitioning into a different show? Okay, like American Horror Story, which is huge. It's another Ryan Murphy show, but it is a huge show, and people, I personally think should be celebrating that she is able to transition into another show. That was episode 4. I hope that if you don't watch shows like this, or if you've never seen it and you don't even know what I'm talking about, please go to Netflix. They have the entire season 1. It's 7 episodes, I believe. So it's a great show. You don't have to be gay to appreciate this show. Trust me. You should just want to be able to experience or understand other people. And that's what this show has done for me. So what did you think about this episode?